It all started one hot July afternoon in the suburbs of Atlanta. Mark, a 35-year-old software developer, had been happily married to Rachel for nearly 8 years. They had what many would call a stable life: a quaint house, a loving dog, and friends who often visited for weekend BBQs. But all that stability came crashing down when Rebecca, the neighbor's wife, knocked on his door, pale and trembling. Rebecca, usually a cheerful woman, looked like she had seen a ghost. Her hands shook as she held out a phone. "Mark, I need to show you something. It's about Rachel and my husband, Tom." Mark's heart skipped a beat, but he kept his cool. He took the phone and saw the incriminating messages between Rachel and Tom. Texts filled with desire, plans of secret meetings, and even pictures of their recent rendezvous. His hands clenched around the phone as a wave of anger and disbelief washed over him. Rebecca's voice cracked as she spoke. I found out a week ago. I thought I could deal with it on my own. But it's eating me alive, Mark. We have to do something." Mark took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "We're going to catch them red-handed," he said through gritted teeth. A plan began to form in his mind, and Rebecca's face slowly shifted from despair to determination. They would each pretend to be out of town. Mark on an urgent business trip and Rebecca spending the weekend with her friends. That way, their unfaithful partners would feel safe enough to meet up. Mark and Rebecca were going to catch Rachel and Tom in the act, no matter what it took. Mark and Rebecca put their plan into motion. They each made their excuses. Mark told Rachel that his company was sending him to a conference in Chicago, while Rebecca informed Tom that she was going on a weekend spa trip with her girlfriends. Both Rachel and Tom seemed eager, almost relieved, by their partners' sudden absences. Mark couldn't help but feel a surge of rage as Rachel kissed him goodbye, her smile too sweet and her eyes too bright for someone about to betray her husband. Rebecca, too, noticed a shift in Tom. He barely hid his excitement as he offered to drop her off at the bus station, his mind likely already planning his rendezvous with Rachel. As he drove off, Rebecca turned to Mark, who was hiding nearby. They watched Tom speed away before they headed back to Mark's house to set up their surveillance. Mark installed a hidden camera in the living room and placed a voice recorder in the bedroom, just in case Rachel and Tom decided to get comfortable in his home. After they finished, they waited in Rebecca's car, parked discreetly a few blocks away. The tension in the car was thick, but Rebecca broke the silence. "I still can't believe they do this to us, after everything we've built with them." Mark clenched his jaw, staring out the window at the quiet suburban street. "We'll get through this, Rebecca. But first, they need to see what it's like to be caught in the act." Hours went by before they saw Tom's black SUV pulling into Mark's driveway. Mark's pulse quickened, and Rebecca's hands gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. Rachel emerged from their house, glancing around before rushing into Tom's arms. They kissed passionately on the porch, as if they didn't have a care in the world. Mark felt his blood boil as he saw the woman he once trusted more than anyone betray him with the neighbor. But the real shock came when they noticed a familiar face walking down the street towards them. It was Jerry, the neighborhood busybody, who always had a knack for knowing everyone's business. He spotted Tom's SUV in Mark's driveway and furrowed his brows in confusion. Jerry wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, but he could sense something was off. He watched Rachel and Tom with a puzzled expression, then turned his head in the direction of Rebecca's car. Mark and Rebecca quickly ducked down, hoping he wouldn't notice them. Rebecca whispered harshly, "What's he doing here? He's going to blow our cover." Mark's mind raced. If Jerry got too curious, he could ruin everything. But they didn't have to worry for long. Just as Jerry started to approach, he seemed to think better of it and shuffled off down the street. Mark and Rebecca breathed a sigh of relief, but the interruption had made them both nervous. "I swear, this neighborhood is a circus," Mark muttered. "Let's hope that's the last surprise of the night." But he couldn't have been more wrong. As Rachel and Tom disappeared into the house, Mark noticed another car pulling up behind them. It was Lydia, Rachel's best friend and the biggest gossip in town. Rebecca's eyes went wide as they realized Lydia had no idea what she was about to walk into. Lydia, oblivious to the situation unfolding inside Mark's house, casually walked up the driveway, holding a bottle of wine. She rang the doorbell, looking around for signs of Mark's presence. When Rachel opened the door, she looked startled but quickly forced a smile. "Oh, hey Lydia. Mark's out of town. What are you doing here?" Lydia lifted the bottle of wine with a smirk. "Just thought I'd drop by and keep you company, girl. I thought you might be lonely with Mark away." Tom tried to hide in the hallway, but it was too late. Lydia spotted him and raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I see you've got company already. Isn't that Tom? What's he doing here?" Rachel stammered, "Oh, it's, not what it looks like. Tom just came by to help me with some plumbing issues." Rebecca and Mark watched from their hidden vantage point, holding back laughter. It was like a bad sitcom playing out in front of them. But their amusement quickly turned to dread as they realized Lydia's presence could complicate their plan. Mark whispered to Rebecca, "If she figures out what's really going on, she'll tell the whole town before we can get proof. We need to intervene." Rebecca shook her head. "Not yet. Let's see how this plays out. If they slip up in front of her, it might make our evidence even stronger." As they watched, Lydia's expression grew suspicious, but she played along, taking a seat in the living room. Rachel poured her a glass of wine, trying to keep up the pretense, but Tom looked increasingly uncomfortable. It was only a matter of time before the situation boiled over. Inside the house, the tension between Rachel, Tom, and Lydia became unbearable. Lydia started asking questions, her voice sharp with suspicion. "So, Tom, you always fix plumbing issues for neighbors, or is this a special arrangement?" she asked with a pointed glance between him and Rachel. Tom's face reddened, and he struggled to come up with a reply, but Rachel cut in with a forced laugh. "Lydia, you're always so nosy. We're just friends helping each other out." Mark and Rebecca exchanged glances, sensing that the charade was about to unravel. But before they could decide whether to step in, Tom snapped, slamming his fist on the table. "I'm tired of pretending, Rachel. Just tell her the truth already." Lydia's eyes widened, and she set down her glass. "What truth? What's going on here?" Rachel shot Tom a furious look, but he ignored her, turning to Lydia. "Rachel and I have been seeing each other behind everyone's backs." "They're happy?" The room fell silent. Lydia stood up, her face pale with shock. "You've got to be kidding me. Rachel, how could you do this to Mark?" And Tom to Rebecca? Outside, Rebecca's breath hitched. Mark clenched his fists, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and anger. This was it, their unfaithful partners were finally exposed. But as Lydia stormed out of the house, she turned back with a cold smile. "You two are going to regret this. Everyone in the neighborhood is going to know what you've been up to." And just like that, the first domino fell. As Lydia stormed out of the house, Rebecca and Mark exchanged a glance. This new twist had blown the situation wide open. Now they knew it wouldn't be long before rumors spread through the neighborhood. But they still needed their proof, clear evidence to confront Rachel and Tom with. They hurried back to Mark's house, slipping in through the back door as quietly as possible. They could hear Rachel and Tom arguing in the living room, their voices rising and falling. Rachel was furious that Tom had confessed to Lydia, while Tom seemed to be unraveling, no longer caring about hiding their affair. Mark and Rebecca watched the scene unfold through the camera feed on Mark's phone. They felt a grim satisfaction knowing that Rachel and Tom's lies were finally catching up with them. Then, out of nowhere, a new message popped up on Rachel's phone from her sister, Emily, who was supposed to be visiting that weekend. It read, "I'm almost there. Can't wait to see you, sis." Mark and Rebecca exchanged a look of disbelief. Another unexpected visitor was on the way, and they weren't sure how this would affect their plans. Mark whispered, "We have to stay hidden until we get the proof we need. But with Emily coming over, things could get messy." Rebecca nodded, her eyes steely. "Let's just hope this doesn't spiral out of control. If Emily finds out, she could end up on Rachel's side." The minutes ticked by, and the tension in the house kept building. Rachel and Tom's argument had escalated, turning into a full-blown shouting match. And just when it seemed like the situation couldn't get any worse, Emily walked through the front door, carrying a bag of groceries. Emily froze in the doorway, her gaze darting between Rachel's flushed face and Tom's clenched fists. "What the hell is going on here?" she demanded, setting the groceries down with a thud. Rachel's expression softened, turning into one of false innocence as she tried to spin the situation. But Tom, clearly fed up, rolled his eyes. "Oh, spare her the lies, Rachel. Emily, your sister's been seeing me behind Mark's back. And you know what? I'm tired of pretending everything's fine." Emily's mouth fell open, and for a moment, she looked as if she might faint. But then she turned on Rachel with a fierceness that took both of them by surprise. "Are you kidding me, Rachel? After everything Mark has done for you, this is how you repay him?" Rachel tried to maintain her composure, but the pressure was too much. "You don't understand, Emily. Things between Mark and me haven't been right for a long time. Tom understands me in a way Mark never could." Mark, listening from the hallway, felt a pang of bitterness. He had always believed their issues were the normal ups and downs of a marriage. Now, he realized Rachel had been using those moments as an excuse to justify her betrayal. Rebecca put a hand on his shoulder, her expression softening as she whispered, "Don't let her words get to you. She's just trying to justify her mistakes." But just as Emily opened her mouth to fire back at her sister, the front door burst open once more, and in came Jerry, the neighborhood gossip, followed by Lydia, who looked ready for round two. Jerry had caught wind of the situation from Lydia and decided to bring his own phone out to record the drama. Well, looks like I showed up just in time for the family reunion," he quipped, holding up his phone as if he were reporting live. Rachel's face went pale and she tried to push Jerry out the door, but he sidestepped her easily, continuing to film. "You think you can just cheat behind your husband's back and get away with it, Rachel? Sorry, but this is prime neighborhood news," Jerry crowed, delighted by the chaos. Tom, who had been fuming in the background, suddenly lunged at Jerry, trying to knock the phone out of his hands. "Turn that off, you nosy jerk," he shouted. But Jerry dodged, and the two of them began scuffling in the living room. Mark and Rebecca couldn't believe what they were witnessing. It was turning into a full-on brawl, with Jerry trying to hold onto his phone while Tom pushed him into a bookshelf. Emily tried to break up the fight, but in the process, she knocked over the bottle of wine Lydia had brought earlier, spilling it all over the carpet. Rachel stood there, her hands over her face, as the scene spiraled out of control. "This is a nightmare," she shrieked, but her voice was drowned out by the chaos around her. Mark turned to Rebecca, shaking his head in disbelief. "This has gone way beyond anything we planned. Should we step in?" Rebecca gave him a determined look. "Not yet. Let them fight it out. It'll make our evidence even more damning if we catch this mess on camera." They dug their own graves. After several minutes, the chaos finally subsided. Jerry managed to escape with his phone, but not before recording a good portion of the argument. Tom and Rachel sat on the couch, disheveled and exhausted, while Emily paced back and forth, glaring at both of them. Lydia, her face flushed with anger, pointed at Rachel. "You think you're going to get out of this unscathed? Mark deserves to know the truth." Rachel threw up her hands, finally breaking down into tears. Okay. Yes, I was cheating, but it's not all my fault. Mark hasn't paid attention to me in years. I needed someone to notice me." Mark had heard enough. He walked into the living room with Rebecca by his side, their presence freezing everyone in place. Rachel's face went from shock to horror as she realized they had been listening the entire time. Tom glared at Mark, his fists clenching again, but he seemed too drained to start another fight. Mark crossed his arms, his voice cold. "You've been noticed, Rachel. You and Tom both. And you're right, this marriage hasn't been perfect. But I would never betray you like this." Rebecca stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "You don't get to blame Mark or me for your choices. You two destroyed your own lives, not us." Tom, finally realizing the gravity of the situation, stood up and tried to approach Rebecca, but she held up a hand. Don't even think about it, Tom. This is over. Rachel looked at Mark with desperation in her eyes, but Mark shook his head. I'm filing for divorce, Rachel. And Tom, if you think you're staying with Rebecca after this, you're dreaming. For the first time, Tom and Rachel were speechless, realizing that their lives as they knew them were about to change forever. In the weeks that followed, everything moved quickly. Mark filed for divorce, and Rachel tried desperately to convince him to reconsider, but he refused to be swayed. Rebecca also ended things with Tom, packing up his belongings and leaving them on the front porch. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood about the scandal, with Jerry's video becoming the talk of the town. But amidst the chaos, a new connection began to grow. Mark and Rebecca found themselves spending more time together, supporting each other through the difficult process of ending their marriages. They discovered they had more in common than they ever realized before, and a bond that had started as a shared pain began to blossom into something more. Rebecca invited Mark over for dinner one evening, and as they sat on her back porch, looking out over the quiet neighborhood, they shared a moment of peace. For the first time in weeks, they both felt a sense of hope. I never thought I'd be here, moving on like this, Mark admitted, taking a sip of his drink. But I think I'm ready to start over. Rebecca smiled softly, reaching out to take his hand. So am I, Mark. So am I. As summer faded into fall, Mark and Rebecca's relationship deepened. They bonded over shared interests, late-night talks, and even the occasional neighborhood gossip about their exes. They often met at the local cafe or took long walks in the park, where they could laugh about their pasts and dream about their futures. One evening, while sharing a pizza at their favorite spot, Rebecca looked at Mark with a contemplative expression. You know, it's strange. I thought I'd be devastated after everything that happened, but I feel free. Mark nodded, his heart swelling with warmth. I feel the same way. It's like I've shed a layer of skin that was suffocating me. I never realized how unhappy I was until now. Just then, a commotion erupted outside. They turned to see a group of their old friends, including Lydia and Emily, walking toward them, laughter echoing through the evening air. Lydia spotted them first and waved enthusiastically. There they are, the new power couple of the neighborhood. Mark and Rebecca exchanged amused glances, both a little embarrassed but also proud of how far they had come. As their friends approached, Lydia smirked. You two look good together. Who would have thought? Emily chimed in. Honestly, I think it's great. You both deserve happiness after what those two put you through. Their friends settled in, and as the conversation flowed, Mark and Rebecca found themselves included in the laughter and camaraderie they had thought they'd lost. The energy around them was electric, reminding them that life continued and so could their own. However, as their relationship blossomed, challenges began to emerge. Rachel, still trying to salvage her image in the neighborhood, started spreading rumors about Mark and Rebecca, painting them as the couple who tore families apart. One afternoon, while Mark was at work, he received a frantic call from Rebecca. Mark, you won't believe what Rachel just did. She cornered me at the grocery store and started yelling about how we're both terrible people. Mark felt his blood boil. Did she threaten you? Not exactly, but she tried to make me look bad in front of the other shoppers. I think she's trying to get sympathy, Rebecca said, her voice shaky. Mark took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm brewing inside him. I'll handle this. We can't let her get away with this. That evening, he gathered a few of their friends, Lydia, Emily, and Jerry, at Rebecca's house. They needed a plan. Mark stood up, addressing the group. Rachel is trying to spin this narrative that we're the villains. We need to set the record straight. Lydia nodded, her expression fierce. Let's take a stand. We'll organize a neighborhood gathering. We can share the truth and let everyone see how Rachel's just playing the victim. Jerry chimed in. I can bring my camera again and document the event. We need to make sure the truth gets out there. Rebecca felt a surge of gratitude as she looked at her friends. Thank you, everyone. I hate that it's come to this, but I want to be transparent about what happened. With a renewed sense of purpose, they began planning the gathering, hoping it would help put an end to Rachel's manipulations. A week later, the neighborhood gathering took place in the park, with a large banner overhead reading, "Community Unity." Mark and Rebecca arrived early to set up, their hearts racing with both excitement and nerves. As the sun began to set, friends and neighbors gathered, curious about the event. Mark took the microphone first. "Thank you all for coming. We know there have been rumors swirling around, and we felt it was time to set the record straight." As he spoke, he shared his side of the story, carefully explaining the betrayal and hurt they had both experienced. Rebecca joined him, emphasizing the importance of honesty and accountability in relationships. The crowd listened intently, and as they shared their story, whispers of support rippled through the crowd. When Rachel finally showed up, accompanied by a few other neighbors, she tried to interrupt, but Mark didn't back down. "Rachel, if you have something to say, please wait your turn. We're sharing our truth here." The tension in the air was palpable. Rachel crossed her arms defiantly but stayed silent, her eyes darting between Mark, Rebecca, and the crowd. After they finished, Lydia took the stage, vouching for their character and expressing her support. "We need to celebrate the people in our lives who lift us up, not drag us down. Mark and Rebecca deserve happiness, and they've already been through enough." The crowd erupted in applause, and Mark could see the shift happening. Neighbors were nodding, and conversations sparked among them. It was clear that Rachel's influence was waning. As the weeks passed after the gathering, the neighborhood dynamics changed dramatically. Rachel's attempts to stir drama were met with skepticism, and Mark and Rebecca found themselves becoming pillars of support for each other and their friends. One day, while sitting on the porch with Rebecca, Mark reflected on how much had changed. "I can't believe how supportive everyone has been. It feels like we've turned a corner." Rebecca smiled, her eyes shining with warmth. "I think they see us as people trying to rebuild our lives, not as villains. It's liberating." As they shared a comfortable silence, Mark reached for Rebecca's hand, intertwining their fingers. "I know we've both been through a lot, but I can't help but think about the future. I see a life with you, Rebecca." Her smile widened, and her cheeks flushed pink. "I've been thinking the same thing, Mark. We've both learned from our pasts, and I want to build something better together." In that moment, they both felt a profound connection, one that came from understanding, healing, and newfound love. Months passed, and as autumn faded into winter, Mark and Rebecca continued to thrive. They became active in the community, organizing charity events and social gatherings that brought neighbors together. Their relationship became a source of inspiration for others, showing how two people could rise from the ashes of betrayal to build a beautiful life together. One crisp evening, under the stars, Mark surprised Rebecca with a picnic in the park where they had first shared their story. As they laughed and reminisced about their journey, he took a deep breath and reached into his pocket. "Rebecca, these past few months have been the happiest of my life. You've brought light back into my world, and I can't imagine spending my future with anyone else." He pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a sparkling ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears of joy filled Rebecca's eyes as she gasped, her heart swelling with love. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." As they embraced under the starry sky, Mark knew their journey had been unconventional, filled with pain and unexpected challenges. But together, they had not only rebuilt their lives, they had created a love that was resilient and true. The neighborhood had watched their transformation, and soon, whispers of hope spread among others facing their own struggles. And so, Mark and Rebecca stepped into their new life together, ready to face whatever came next, hand in hand, knowing that true love could conquer all.